George Christie, welcome to the show.
I appreciate it. How you doing, Pat?
I'm doing good.
You go
Thank
by
you.
Pat or Patrick?
Hey, either one. I've been called a lot worse.
I'm
The
sure
nuns
you
in
have.
Catholic school used to call me Patrick. So, Pat's fine. Patrick, I don't care. Whatever.
Okay.
Either way. But I, thanks for taking the time out to be with us today. I really appreciate it. You're a busy guy, and we're ping-ponging back and forth. So I'm glad we actually landed this after some consternation, and I appreciate it. So this is going to be
Yeah,
good.
well, I was finishing up a book and I also, sometimes I go out and I do lectures and I work as an expert witness now for defense attorneys.
Okay.
And so I try to keep busy. Uh, but
Okay.
I'm happy to be here. Uh, it's,
But
you know,
but let's
it was
start at
a
the
little bit of a struggle for me.
yeah.
Uh, Nailing me down's tough, isn't it?
It is. You're like a snake, and it's like, man. But let's start at the beginning. You're the child of immigrant parents. Are you both mom and dad both from Greece?
Well, it's my grandparents that were from Greece.
Oh, okay, okay.
My mom and dad were the first generation here. All my grandparents on both sides of my family all came from Greece,
Oh, cool.
and it a lot of heavy influence. They were very traditional. My grandparents, my grandmother was betrothed to my grandfather. He
Okay.
came over like a year ahead of time. She was 11 when she got on the, no, 12 when she got on the boat to come to the States. She got here, she was 13. They barely knew each other. They got married and,
Wow.
they lived together for 70 years,
Isn't
Same
that
with my other
amazing?
grandparents.
Isn't that
It is
amazing?
amazing.
How do those marriages last? But they do.
They do.
Yeah.
They had a really deep respect and love for each other. And I always admired that, myself, I've had a couple of failed marriages. So if my grandfather and grandmother were alive, I'd be more of an outcast.
Well,
It's
when
bad
I
enough, you
well,
know what
yeah.
I'm saying.
Oh, yes, I do. When I got divorced, my poor Irish Catholic mother thought for sure, that was a rocket ship to hell. I'm like, well, I'm already going there, Ma. So, I'm taking the expressway
Yeah,
with
I
me.
heard it. It's interesting. The grandparents just, they dug in, they made the best of what they had, and you know, a lot of immigrants were very, very successful.
Very well. Both my parents are immigrants. Mom came over on a boat. Dad actually came over on a plane. He was 18 years old, and he made the local newspaper in this little village in Ireland. It was still a third world country. Jimmy O'Donnell flies to America. That was a huge deal
That
back
was the
then.
headline.
Yes, he still has the newspaper clipping. It's so cool. I love seeing that kind of stuff. So,
Sure.
so anyways, uh, let's talk about your book first, The Exile from Front Street, and we'll talk a little more about it later on. I want to get,
Okay.
but I want to get this out of the way. The title of this book, what does it mean?
Well, it was kind of a play on words, and it was Exile on Front Street is the actual title. The club. I quit the club, left the club in good standing. Within a couple of weeks, Sonny Barger, who him and I used to butt heads, for 3 decades we were butting heads. Uh, he saw the opportunity to disparage my name. He went on a character assassination. So he changed my status from out good to bad. And he made such a ruckus and made it so big. He wanted everyone to know that not only was I no longer part of the Hells Angels, but I was also in bad graces with them, if you will. And I thought it was kind of funny. I was exiled, but there's a old saying in the motorcycle world. You put me on Front Street. For someone he wanted to forget about, he just wouldn't leave me alone. And
Now,
so I came up with that title,
for those
Exiled on Front Street.
from those who don't know, who is Sonny Barger?
Well, Sonny Barger was a gentleman that started the Oakland Hells Angels. The power base for the Hells Angels is in Southern California. 1957, Sonny, along with another guy named Boots, starts a Hells Angel charter in Oakland, California. That was the third Hells Angel charter. You had Purdue, San Bernardino, you had San Francisco, and then you had Oakland. Oakland was the third charter to start. A lot of people think that Sonny Barger started the Hells Angels, but he didn't. But the power base was in Southern California. And I would say within 3 or 4 years after Sonny establishing the Oakland Charter, taking over the Oakland Charter, he shifted the power base from Southern California to Northern California, specifically Oakland, and he became the voice and the face of the Hells Angels, if you will. That's who Sonny Barger was.
Gotcha. Now let's go back even a little bit. Well, push forward just a little bit. You joined the Marines during the Vietnam era. Why?
1965, I took the oath. I think I left in 1966 for boot camp.
Okay. So why did you do that? Why the Marines?
Well, I was a reserve unit in town. We were suspecting the unit would get called out at any time, and I had like probably 2 or 3 dozen buddies from high school join that unit. So specifically, that's why I went into that particular unit. I
Hmm.
just had kind of a desire to be a Marine. I'd heard they were supposed to be the best and the toughest. Of
Sure.
course, every branch, feels that the best. But
I have a lot of friends that are Marines, so yes.
yeah, so I went to Marines, 1966. Went to boot camp in MCRD, Marine Corps, recruit depot in San Diego, and changed my life. I think military is not a bad thing. A lot of people seem like there was a period of time. I think it's not that way so much anymore. But military was frowned upon and looked down on. But I think military training in anybody's life is going to help them in the long run.
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in service, and I'm glad we don't have a draft because I don't think it's for everyone. It's
No,
not a one
it's
size
not.
fits all. But I do believe that coming out of high school, you're 18 years old, I think it would do a world of good for people to do some public service, even if it's a year or 2 years. Kind of what they do in Israel, where it's like, okay, you graduate from high school. Now you can pick. You could go to the police, fire, you could be an EMT, you could work
Right.
in a soup kitchen, you could dig ditches, you could, or join the
I think
military.
that's a good. I think it's a good policy.
I think
And
so too.
it instills discipline. You get a lot of. I learned a lot of stuff in the Marines. I learned a lot about discipline, problem solving, et cetera, et cetera.
So how long were you in the Marine Corps?
Well, I was in that reserve unit almost a little bit over, well, almost 5 years.
Okay. So you just
And
you just aged out and you didn't re-up?
no, I did not. I actually got in trouble, and I wound up kind of drifting over to the Defense Department. So I went out of the Marines in to the Defense Department. I worked for the DoD for
Hmm.
almost 10 years as well.
Okay, what are you doing
And
for them?
I was a communications troubleshooter, and there was a submarine surveillance system in Southern California here off
Okay.
Santa Cruz Island. And uh, that's when we were in the Cold War with Russia.
Ah,
And
okay.
I used to keep that installation up along with another guy. There was two of us that we alternated. And then there was also a missile test range on San Nicolas Island. They'd fly me out there and drop me off, and
Mm,
I did a lot of stuff out there. But
cool.
they ultimately found out I was president of the Los Angeles Hells Angels, and they were going to take my security clearance away.
Oh, okay.
They basically told me I had to make a decision. You want to be a Hells Angel, or you want to work for the Department of Defense. So it wasn't a hard decision for me. I'd, been deep into the outlaw bike culture for about 10 years. So I, packed up my work belongings and turned in my ID and left base.
Okay, gotcha. Now, did you think that time in the military, DOD, helped you out later when you were the president of the Hells Angels?
Yeah, I think I learned leadership skills, learn how to work with others, learn how to improvise. I could go on and on.
Sure.
Anybody that's been in the military and been through a tough boot camp, you learn discipline
Oh yeah.
and a lot of other things.
Yeah,
They
absolutely.
instill in you.
Now, when did becoming a Hell's Angel come into your thoughts? Who introduced you
Well,
to it?
in 1966, I started running around with a bike club called the Question Marks, and I was down in Anaheim, and my friends and whatnot down there, we were teenagers. They were starting to get in a lot of trouble, and my parents decided they want to move out of that area, and they moved up to Camarillo, California, which was billed as one of the safest cities in the United States. But in that city, there was an outlaw motorcycle club, 1% motorcycle club called the Question Marks, and they hung out with the Hells Angels and the Satan Slaves, and so that's how I got my introduction. I started hanging out at the Question Mark Clubhouse. It was out in Somas. There was a gentleman, Movie Land Cars of the Stars. He used to rent cars to movies,
Mm,
uh, and Dick Woods was the leader of the Question Marks and founder of the Question Marks. He did all the maintenance on the cars and started hanging out at the barn, we called it, and got introduced into riding. Eventually, 1966, when I got back from boot camp, I bought a motorcycle and just kind of drifted deeper and deeper into that world. And then in the mid 70s. I was introduced to a guy, Old Man John, who was the president of the Los Angeles Hells Angels, and he kind of took me under his wing, and ultimately became a full-fledged member of the Hells Angels.
interesting. Now, for the Hells Angels, were you a hang around and then a prospect, or how long did that process take back then?
Well, I ran around as an independent with the Question Marks, and then I ran with a club called the Satan Slaves, who they were all friends with the Hells Angels. And in around 1975, I started hanging out more and more with the Hells Angels, met them up on the Kern River and got invited to their clubhouse. So by 1976, I was a full-fledged member of the Hells Angels.
Now, did you have to go through prospecting first?
Yeah, you go through a hang around period,
Yeah.
prospect period, and then you get voted on as a member.
How long did the prospecting take for you to be before
Well,
you
for
became
me,
a
I
full patch?
I did it in 4 months,
Oh, that's
but
fast, isn't it?
yeah, it was pretty fast. And the process now is a minimum, you know, 2 years because of police infiltration and whatnot. We had some informants come through the ranks, and so you got to hang around for a year, and then you've got to prospect for a year.
Now,
But I was probably one of the last guys to do it in that short of
yeah.
envelope of time.
Now, as far as prospect, for those that are not in the know, what exactly does that mean, and what are you doing?
Well, you're pretty much doing whatever they want you to do, and it's a thankless job, tedious job. A lot of grunt stuff, running around getting people stuff, doing their bidding. Not a very not a very satisfying position to be in, and I wanted to get it uh, over as fast as I could. So,
So,
I
so
tried to excel in everything I did.
you're the gopher, you're the bike washer, you're
Yep,
the
pretty
go get me
much.
a pack of smokes guy, get me.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
Uh,
was there, and you often hear things like there's an initiation of some kind, anything like that?
well, nah, they don't really have that. I mean, the night I got voted in the club, I was called in the clubhouse and asked if I was ready. I wanted to step into this lifestyle. Basically, made it understood that my family would take second place to the club and the club members. And I said, "Yeah, this is what I want to do." Old man John gave me he was the president of Los Angeles. He gave me my patch. I put it on. We did a little rough housing, And then we rode out to San Bernardino. There was a woman out there named Betty that actually made the patches for us.
Mm.
I was wearing somebody else's patch that night, and I took my vest out there, and she sewed the Hells Angels name and logo on it while I waited there in the little lobby. But that was a long time ago. She's long gone. She used to make the patches for everybody in the Hells Angels.
Yeah,
That was the central location. Betty the Patchmaker, we called her in San Bernardino.
that's interesting. So, what was it about being in a motorcycle club, particularly the Hells Angels, that appealed to you so much? And,
Well,
let me just back up just a little bit first. You know, you work for DOD, then they kind of gave you the ultimatum, and it's like, I'm going full in with the Hells Angels, but you got to make a living. I mean, you got to live somewhere, you got to eat. I mean, how are you making money?
well, that's I worked for the government. After the government, I opened up a motorcycle shop. I was a pretty good mechanic, turn a
Okay.
wrench. Worked for myself most of the time. I
You
had a
did.
t-shirt
Okay.
company. I ultimately opened up a concert promotion business. I had a bail bonds company. I had a tattoo shop. I was pretty enterprising. A lot of the guys work 8 to 5 jobs. Uh, but I put 10 years in the Department of Defense and then was asked to leave. And I wasn't going to put myself in that situation again. So I really went to work for myself. But, and the record speaks for itself. A lot of guys do whatever they can to get by, and
Right.
sometimes that entails breaking the law. I mean, the record speaks for itself. I'm not going to deny no one's ever done any criminal activity that's a member of the Hells Angels
I was
because
going to talk
they
about that,
have.
but I didn't want to lament on that because, that's one of those talking points where I think you and I could kind of dig in our heels and I'd say, well, of course it's a criminal organization. And you're going to say, no, it's an organization that has criminals in there. Yeah. So, I mean, this is one of
And
those
that's
things.
that's usually my position on it. And I give lectures sometimes, and uh, sometimes the audience is very receptive, and sometimes you have law enforcement personnel out there that they want to argue the fact with me. And like I always take the position, the record speaks for itself. You've got criminals in the profession of attorneys, doctors, lawyers. Uh, Politicians, police officers. It just depends.
Yeah.
But
But usually I don't have like, my Tuesday night softball league doesn't have a rival gang that, we're going to go to war with or something like that.
you
That's the
don't go
way
to
I look
war
at
with
it.
the department in the next county.
No, usually we don't. Like I said,
Uh,
it's kind of like politics. Yeah, I'm not going to change your mind. You're not going to change my mind, but we could still be
no,
friends.
correct.
We
Yeah,
could still have a civil conversation. I think that's missing in today's society, actually, as a whole.
I think you're absolutely right. It's you, people just seem to have a tendency to want to take it up a notch.
Yes,
And
it's like,
I respect your past. I respect your position now, and I would hope that you and I would hope that the viewers at home perhaps don't agree with me, but I'd hope they understand where I'm coming from.
no, I do 100%. So yeah, like I said, that's definitely one of those things that we just agree to disagree, and we can
Right.
move on from there. And unfortunately, a lot of people can't move on. Like I said, they dig those heels in, and no matter how loud I yell at you, you're not going to change your mind, and no matter how
No, not at all.
loud you yell at me, I'm not going to change my mind. So, well, like I said, we agree to disagree. But anyways, I'm glad we got that out of the way right away. But what about being in a motorcycle club, particularly the Hells Angels, appeal to you? What was like the spark? What was the man? I want to be
Um,
in that so bad.
Obviously, the motorcycles, the brotherhood. I really had some fancy bikes over the years. A lot of the guys would take the Harleys and customize them, and that was the basis for the club. Of course, as the club got more and more notoriety, more and more police surveillance. problems with other bike clubs. The lifestyle kind of changes a little bit. You have that freedom of the road type of attitude when you initially come around, and pretty soon you're not only trying to protect yourself, you're trying to stay out of jail. I mean, I can name off probably a half a dozen informants that tried to set me up over the years. And, these are people that are usually have their own legal issues and they're trying to acquit themselves from them by, dragging me into it or, uh, uh, you know, trying to create a new crime for me to be involved in. I
Yeah,
mean,
and to be fair, some informants are also paid. Confident,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
so I mean sometimes there is ulterior motives,
Yeah,
and
Tony Tate, are you familiar with that name?
a little bit.
Tony Tate was a member who he didn't have any police problems. The police weren't holding a indictment over his head. He just felt he wanted to bust the Hells Angels. I think his motive was financial. I think he wanted to write a book. I think
Okay.
he was a bit of a adrenaline junkie. And I think he thought he would wind up getting a movie out of it somehow.
Mm.
But he came after me on several occasions. A lot of tape recording conversations between him and I. Ultimately, he did get Sonny Barger, sent him to prison for 5 years for conspiring to blow up the Outlaws out of
Oh,
Kentucky. And
okay.
you're familiar with Outlaws,
Yes, I am.
yeah.
Yeah, with Milwaukee. But what was it particularly about the Hells Angels, compared to like the Banditos or the Mongols or whoever?
Well,
Why the
you have
Angels?
to understand the Mongols at that particular point in time were a new fledgling club.
Okay.
They were very big, probably had, back then maybe 50 guys in it, in just one area in Southern California. The Outlaws were in Chicago and Milwaukee, the
Yep.
Florida. The Banditos were in Texas. So I gravitated towards the number one club, who I thought was the number one club in Southern California, and
Okay.
that was the Hells Angels. So it's really a geographical decision. But I perhaps would have, if I would have had to go up to the Bay Area, I probably would have. I mean, I wanted to be a Hells Angel that bad.
Gotcha. Now, when you started your life with the Hells Angels, did you ever think you would go on to serve to be one of the longest terms of president of one of the charters? It was Ventura from 78 to 2011, correct?
Yeah, I was actually president in Los Angeles, and then in 1978, I packed up and moved
Okay.
the charter to Ventura. But it wasn't something that I tried to do consciously or, I set a goal for myself. It was kind of a spontaneous thing. I was the best guy for the job. Nobody seemed to challenge me. A couple of, occasionally I would have problems with certain members, but it just worked into a really long tenure for myself.
Yeah, so, how long were you with the Angels before you hit president of the LA chapter?
I became the vice president probably within 6 months.
Wow, that's
And
fast.
yeah, it was very fast. And then old man John, he was old back then. He was in his 60s back when I came around the club,
Yeah.
and he got cancer,
Mm,
and he kind of turned the club over to me in Los Angeles, and then I moved it to Ventura in 1978. But I became president in Los Angeles 1977, and so I was president from 1977 to 2011,
okay.
however long that is. So
Gotcha.
it was a
Because
while. It was a pretty good run.
that's unusual though to
Yeah, it
A,
is unusual.
to be president for that long and B, that quickly you rose that fast. Did you go through like were you sergeant at arms for a while, then VP and then president
Oh, I
or
was VP. I was VP, and then from there I went to president when John stepped down.
okay,
John just said, this is a young man's game. I've got cancer. I'm turning everything over to you.
gotcha. Now everything is voted on though, correct? It isn't just one
Correct.
person just So, and how many people would like say be
Well,
voting in it?
the thing is, it is voted on, but when you've got a powerful person like Old Man John behind you, you know, it's a shoe-in for you pretty much.
Okay.
But I mean, everybody voted yes. Over the years, I would from time to time I would have votes of confidence just to make sure
Mm,
everybody was still happy with supporting me as a leader. But I never really had any challenges. The only time I was ever really challenged was, I had 3 prison terms, and that's usually when people make their moves. You're
okay.
going to go to prison, and somebody tries to undermine you. There's always somebody that wants your job. I think I was a strong enough presence and personality that no one was going to do it when I was on the street. When you're sitting in a prison somewhere, isolated, for someone to make a political power move against you, it's pretty easy.
Sure.
You're not there. They have no resistance. But
So
even
it's
from prison,
hmm,
I was able to control things.
so it's not an automatic that hey, George is going to prison, he's got to give up, the presidency and like the VP like fills in or how what does that look like?
Usually the VP fills in, but I'll tell you, there's
But
another
they
guy,
don't take
Guy
over. Okay.
Castiglione. There's a Hell's Angel named Guy Castiglione that him and I, our tenure was, lengthy. Uh, Anytime he would go to prison, it'd usually be for 5, 6, 7 years, and he would step down and
Mm,
someone would take his place. But as soon as he got back, he was powerful enough, and he had a kind of a overwhelming type personality on people, he would immediately take back over.
gotcha.
But my terms in prison were very short, and I remained in that leadership position.
Okay. Now, there's nothing more important to a member of the Hells Angels than the club. Everything else takes a back seat. How do you
Correct.
function in society like that? I mean, there's work, spirituality, marriage, kids, friends. They all play second
Well,
fiddle if you're an angel.
that's absolutely correct, and it's probably why I had 2 failed marriages. And I mean, these weren't flash in the pan type marriages.
Yeah.
First time I was married 25 years, single for 10 years, and then married again for, over 20 years. But they're very trying on a relationship. You got a lot of police surveillance. Uh, you know, I had a murder contract on me, at least 2 I know of, in the late 90s from the Outlaws. Taco Harry Bowman put that murder contract on me. And, there were rumors the Mongols, were making a move on me. And I always had a pretty good relationship with the Banditos. I never felt like they were specifically targeting me. But, you're in that leadership position and you're at war with another bike club and an opportunity arises, somebody's going to make a move against you. So, uh, if it's not another bike club, you've got a law enforcement individual that's targeting you for whatever reason. I mean, had a lot of multitask agencies investigate me. I was indicted in 1986, 87. I spent a year in jail. I beat that case. I proved that the feds had framed me. In 2001, I had a 59 count state racketeering charge against me. Was kind of collapsed under its own weight, but I spent a year in solitary confinement. And then, of course, my 2011 case was a very serious case. I was facing 3 mandatory minimum life sentences. And my daughter was practicing law then, and she pretty much dismantled that indictment. Took us 3 years. Uh, Ultimately, I had to give. I was on house arrest 2 years, and then I gave a year of my time up in Texas. I went to prison in Texas
Mm,
for a year, and
gotcha.
then I came home. Yeah.
Yeah, it would just be, I think it would be incredibly difficult, strained relationships with children, divorces, you almost scratch your head and wonder, is this really worth it?
Well, I think I reached a point in time when I finally decided to leave the club. I felt that we'd kind of become the people we rebelled against, and
Yeah.
we were bound by so many rules and regulations. I really didn't
Yeah.
feel like I was in a outlaw organization anymore.
Right, right. Now, did you have any friends that were not Hell's Angels that you hung out with?
I had two friends, basically that weren't Hells Angels, and I interacted with both of them on and off.
Hmm.
One of the individuals I'd known since I was 15, 16. The other guy, I met him in the late 90s. And, the one gentleman passed away a couple of years ago. We were still friends and
Yeah.
still speaking, every other day or so, when he passed away. And then my other friend, I still communicate with him. But, you get pretty much isolated. You wind up probably maybe similar like to law enforcement.
There are some
You wind
similarities, yes.
Yeah,
When
you wind up being friends with the people that understand the lifestyle and understand what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. There's a lot of unwritten rules. There's a lot of unwritten, ways to conduct yourself that if you're not immersed in that lifestyle, you don't get it. And I,
right,
I think I don't know how long you were a law enforcement officer, but
25
I'm sure
years.
you experienced.
Yeah,
Yeah, well,
25.
you had to experience it.
Oh, and you know what? I was a sergeant for 17 of my 25. So whenever we got new recruits in from the academy to the district, one of the first things I'd sit them down and give them the speech. One of the speeches was, you know what? Hold on to your friends that are not cops for dear life. Because you're gonna,
Right.
you get sucked up into this world. And it's like military, any kind of like quote unquote brotherhood, whatever. The camaraderie is, off the charts. And you get into a bubble, and it's good for you to see other points of views. It's good for you to learn about other people that aren't wearing the same uniform as you, et cetera, et cetera. It's just a good thing. It makes you, I think it makes you a better cop. It makes you a better human being. So, yeah, I could see though where it's very comfortable with, like you said, not many people are going to understand your lifestyle and,
No,
that are civilians.
no, they don't. And, like you get in the habit of, you walk in a restaurant, you want to sit facing the door.
Right.
A
Oh,
lot
yeah,
of people they don't understand that kind of stuff. And,
I do.
of course you do,
Yeah, absolutely. Now,
but
you said there's some unwritten rules and there are written rules too. I'm sure there's a playbook for the Hells Angels. Or am I mistaken? Did you have like a rule book that you had to memorize or anything like that
well,
when you were
we
prospecting?
certainly had rules, and uh, some of them were unwritten rules.
Like what?
Uh,
Like what are some of the rules and unwritten rules?
well, don't leave your patch laying around, on a table behind on a chair. Don't get caught going into another club's area by yourself. Going into their bar. I mean, a lot of them are just basic logical things, and then of course, you've got specific rules that are written down. You can't belong to any other organization. Uh, you're exclusive property of the Hells Angels. You sign your bike over to the club when you
Oh, you
come
do.
around.
Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So you
So
signed your
there's a
wow. Because I knew
yeah,
that, like the patch that you wear is Hell's Angels property. That's not yours, correct?
correct. Well, it's interesting because you're supposed to turn everything in when you leave. Like I turned in a lot of stuff. Some of the stuff I didn't turn in because I had a case pending, and I started getting my property back, and I was basically arguing with Sonny Barger the way he was treating me.
Mm.
So, I told him to stuff it. And now you've got these collectors that go around and they buy and pay high prices for, Hell's Angel memorabilia, if you will.
Yeah,
It's
because even
become
like pins or rings, it's
right.
you often see like Hell's Angels with lots of rings. that are significant or whatever. And
That
that's all.
you have to take off if you're going to hit another Hell's Angel. That's one of the rules. You can't
Okay.
hit a brother with your rings on.
I'm sure they appreciate that. That's interesting to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I
Now,
mean, there's all kinds of little rules.
right, right.
Most of them are common sense type rules.
Sure. Now, you became an official spokesperson for the club. Did you want this
Correct.
job and how did you get it?
Well, I didn't petition for it, but what happened was I started helping the copyright lawyers that protected our logo and name, and they basically kind of schooled in me how to protect your brand.
Hmm.
And uh, I wound up, I was pretty good on camera. I wound up doing a lot of interviews with newspapers, televisions, documentaries, and whatnot. And I just kind of worked into that position. Prior to me, Sonny, that was what Sonny Barger did. And that's how he became the name and the face of the Hells Angels.
Oh, okay.
When he got cancer and had his larynx cut out, uh, he quit doing interviews. I can only think of maybe one interview he did after that was 1982. He had that operation, and in 1998 or 90, I think 99, him and I did a show on the History Channel together.
Hmm.
I think that's the first interview he did in really a long time. I had basically talked him into doing interview with me. They were doing a special called "In Search of the Hells Angels," and I just said, come on, Sonny, you got to do this with me. And
Yeah, yeah.
he did. Uh, uh, but just kind of worked into a position for me.
Okay. Gotcha. Now, I remember going through the book. You actually carried the Olympic torch for a while, right?
I did. In
Tell us about that.
1984, I carried uh, the torch on the way to the Coliseum for a kilometer. And
Okay.
the reason we did that was because the ATF said we were going to disrupt the Olympics. And, like I'd mentioned earlier, I'd learned how from the trademark lawyers how you protect your brand. You have to control the narrative. So when these agents start saying we would disrupt the Olympics, I wanted to get out in front of it, and so we participated in the Olympics by carrying the torch in the torch relay run.
Now, were you
So
wearing your colors while you were doing it?
no, you have to wear a uniform.
Okay.
They have specific rules, but
So I'm guessing there was a bunch of angels along the way cheering
there
you on.
was hundreds and hundreds of Hell's Angels there. It was
Oh,
just a major, major event
yeah,
for the
that's
club.
it's not every day you see something like that. That's interesting.
Oh,
That's
that,
very
that-
interesting.
yeah, it was
Now,
cool.
yeah, I bet it was. I bet it was. Now, wasn't there like
I
some
still have
kind
the torch.
Oh, you do? I didn't know
Yeah, I
people
still
were
have.
able to keep the torch.
Yeah, everybody gets to keep the torch. What you do is you pass the flame and retain the
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
living torch.
Oh, is
Yeah,
that cool? How cool is that?
yeah,
Now, wasn't there
yeah. It
like
was
some
great.
static with the Kennedys over that?
I had designated a specific locale for the money to go to Pottstown, Pennsylvania, and Eunice Shriver, President Kennedy's sister, basically said I didn't have the authority to determine where the money went. I said I did have the authority, and I said read the contract. When you make the donation, I made a donation, $3,000, and basically she told me to go to hell on the phone and told me to sue her. So I did, and
So you
and
sued the Kennedys.
it
How
was
did that
well,
work out for you?
I got the money,
Well,
sent it to
there you
kids
go.
in Potsdam. Yeah,
What was the charity that you donated it to?
Special Olympics.
Okay.
Yeah,
Outstanding. That's a very
yeah,
worthy
it was great.
charity. Look at you fighting
It
with
is.
Kennedys. That's funny. Um,
Yeah.
so-
She told me, she said, first Sergeant Shriver got on the phone, and Sergeant Shriver, he was the head of the Peace Corps. You remember when
that's right.
President
Yeah.
Kennedy, that was his wife. And he got on the phone and, said, hey, man, why are you causing all these problems? You talked about suing us. And I said, well, yeah, I'm going to sue you if you don't send the money to Potsdam
Yeah.
because I promised the kids that the money be coming there. And he goes, "Well, somebody wants to talk to you." And I guess he thought that I would succumb to the female Kennedy charm or something. And Eunice got on the phone, and her and I it got a little bit testy,
Okay.
And she says, "You don't know who you're messing with. We're
Oh
the
my.
Kennedys." I said, "Well, you don't know who you're messing with. We're the Hells Angels." And
The Kennedy's Hells Angels showdown. Oh my
the
gosh.
feud.
Oh, that's
So
funny.
I wound up suing her. I won, and well, I didn't actually win. They settled out of court. The judge told the lawyers, "You cannot win this. He's got an ironclad contract here that
Yeah.
you guys sent to him."
What was
And
their argument? Why wouldn't they want you to send $3,000 to to Special Olympics for God's sakes?
well, they wanted to control where the money went.
Okay.
Eunice Shriver said the money will stay in Washington.
Oh,
And I said, "No, I want the money to go to Pottstown." And she goes,
okay.
"No, the money stays where I say it goes." And it was a power play and kind of a
Yeah.
pissing match. And you know, they lost.
Wow. So let's talk about the 60-minute interview with Mike Wallace. Yeah, when was that?
98 or 99, I think.
Yeah, I watched the YouTube clip and uh, it was you and who's your partner?
Cisco Valderrama,
Cisco. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now he was the president of which chapter?
Oakland.
Oakland chapter. That's right.
Sonny had left for prison.
Yeah.
That informant Tony Tate had set him up. Sonny had agreed and given. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, there's the
Sonny
proof.
had agreed and given Tony Tate permission to blow up the outlaws in Kentucky.
Oh
So
gosh.
he wound up doing 5 years. Cisco took over for Oakland, and during that bust with Tony Tate, two Hells Angels from Oakland that were crank cookers uh, also went to jail. Each of them got 40 years.
Holy cow. All right.
Yeah.
Now, we were talking before the camera went on here, and it didn't show you guys in a very positive light. I'll just say that.
No, and we knew that going into it. The attorneys, Hell's Angels have a battery of attorneys,
Oh
and
yeah, most
half of them
clubs
said
do.
do it. Yeah, half of them said do it. The other half said don't do it. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. I felt I could get on there and uh, do okay against Mike Wallace. I had reservations about Cisco,
Yeah.
and Cisco insisted he go on there with me. I think he was flexing his muscles as the new Oakland president,
Ah, okay.
and he just didn't fare too well.
No, he didn't.
No,
Wallace kind of shred him up a bit. I will say that. Now, from reading your
he
book,
did. And Cisco got mad at me. He wouldn't talk to me for 6 months. He thought it was my fault that Wallace made him look bad.
I didn't know that. That's funny. Now,
Yeah, it was fun.
reading the book, you were saying that Mike Wallace was hitting on your wife.
Well, he was flirting with her,
Yeah,
which I found kind of humorous. And
he is.
uh, he actually, you're not going to believe this, but my daughter has it. He did a 60-minute mock interview for her. He
Okay.
interviewed her, had the producers edit it, and he sent it to her as a Christmas gift,
Oh,
which I thought was just hilarious.
that is kind of funny. Oh
I took
boy.
it in stride.
All right, Mike. That's interesting.
Well, from what I understand, Mike was quite the ladies' man, they say.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I
I
would
don't, I
think
don't know if
that
that's,
I don't care who you are sitting at the other end back then, 60 minutes, that's a hot seat. That's
yeah.
not that could turn ugly really quick. That's back when it was
And
actually journalism.
some of it did get ugly. I mean,
Yeah.
Cisco didn't look good. I'm
Yeah.
not saying I looked any better, but I think Cisco fared a lot worse than I did.
He did. Yeah, you didn't look so bad, George, but Cisco was he was squirming. I've taken a lot of classes and like micro expressions and body language and all that, and
Right.
it did not look pretty at all. It was just like, oh boy, this ain't good,
Poor old
man.
Cisco.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
it
a
was
tough
funny.
one.
he just would not talk to me. He blamed me, and uh,
That's
he didn't listen when I told him about the type of interview he was going to put
yeah,
himself up to.
yeah, he's
And
yeah, Mike Wallace ain't gonna lob softballs for the entirety. That's for sure. But that's
oh no,
oh well, live and learn. Now, you spent some time in prison, like you alluded to before, in jail. But one thing that really stuck out to me was you did 1 year in solitary confinement.
I did.
What did that do to you? I can't even imagine.
Well, well, the sensory deprivation in itself is it's terrible. The interesting thing is after you're in there about 7, 8 months, they pull you out and they evaluate you, and then they give you antipsychotic drugs. You qualify for them.
Okay.
And I just thought it was insidious that, they would put me in a situation when they knew they would possibly, have to prescribe me these uh, type of drugs. I, you know, the sensory deprivation, the lights are always on. It's freezing. And I was in a place called a dungeon. It was down kind of underneath the jail.
Yeah.
And I mean, it affects you in a negative way.
What jail was that?
It was the Ventura County Jail. It
For a
was the
year. Now,
isolation.
most of the time, jail sentences aren't that long. Jail is like an in between. You're waiting for a trial or,
Right,
that kind of
right.
thing. So,
Yeah, well, they were also using it as a bargain chip. They were trying to get me
okay.
to plead out so they
Okay.
could, so I could get out of solitary, and I just wouldn't do it.
What
In the
was
midst
their
of all that,
what was the reasoning why they put you in solitary confinement? For your own safety
they
or
said that I was so high profile that I would be disruptive to the prison population and possibly might be a target for one of the prison gangs, which was completely ludicrous. The Hells Angels, although they have no power in jail like the Aryan Brotherhood or the Mexican Mafia or the Black Guerrilla family, they have a lot of sway,
okay.
and no one's going to take on the Hells Angels in prison. When I was in Terminal Island, and even when I was in Texas, being an ex-Hells Angel, I was treated very well.
Okay. Now, what was, solitary confinement can mean different things for different places, etc. What was like a day in solitary confinement like?
Well, locked down for 23 hours. Sometimes, and not every day, you could get out, take a shower. Uh, uh, just no contact, no other prisoners around you, no TV, no radio, just basically bad. I got in trouble when I was down there, and they said I had contraband in my cell,
Okay.
and they put me on what they call a disciplinary diet. They don't do it anymore, but at that particular point in time, they did. And they only feed you twice a day. They give you just a much, just enough protein and carbs to sustain you. And I was on that for a while. I have a bridge in my lower teeth, and I had taken a chicken bone and made like a toothpick out of it.
Oh,
And
okay.
one of the guards found it in my cell, and they violated me, took me to they have like a you ever work in the jail?
Yeah.
Yeah, they had like a mock trial, they
Yeah, I
go in there.
internship with the sheriff's department when I was in college, and
Okay.
and it was the same thing. It was like there was like a trial, and like the lieutenant was the
Yeah,
judge, and the
yeah,
deputies would
absolutely.
state their case, and you would state your case, and it's like, okay, 3 days in the
Right.
hole, or 5 days
Yeah.
in the hole, or whatever the punishment that he would dole out.
Well,
So,
I was already in the hole, so they took my mail away, took my phone calls away, took my visits away. Uh, I know it was Christmas time. I had 350 uh, pieces of mail turned back, like sent, you know, uh,
wow,
just
yeah,
it
that's
was it
tough.
was quite an experience. I mean, I don't, initially solitary confinement was set up as a punishment. You go in there, you do something wrong, you go in there for 2 weeks or ten
Right.
days, and then you get out. but it's kind of segued into a full-time deal now. And you get some of these guys like in the AB or the Mexican Mafia. These guys, some of these guys have been in solitary confinement for 25, 30 years. I mean,
Well, I
it's
I mean, I saw it
really got to
when
affect.
right, I saw it when I worked in a jail for a summer, I internship with the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Department, and I had never seen anything like that before. And then I read Danny Trejo's biography, and he talks
Right?
about when he was in solitary confinement. And I was just like, wow. And he was very specific about how he dealt with it. He said he'd watch movies in his head. He'd start from the beginning to the
Sure.
end,
Yeah.
and he
Yeah.
said, you're literally watching a movie. You're not in front of a TV screen or anything like that. You're not at the movies, obviously, but there was ways to kind of combat it. Did you do stuff like that?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. What was really bad is they had a very limited library, and they passed the book cart around, and uh, they open your cell up and they push the cart in your cell, and you can pick out. I think you could have two or three books. I can't remember what the count was, but most of the books, the last 30 or 40 pages was tore out of all of them.
Oh,
It was like and I quit reading the books because you'd get to the end and the pages would be gone.
oh,
And
that's tough.
so
That's
I don't
tough.
know if the prisoners were doing it. I don't know if one of the officers was doing it, thought he was being a smart ass, but playing these little jokes on you.
Right,
But
right. Now,
uh,
what do you think the difference is, or is there a difference between the Hells Angels now and from when you were like leading the charter?
well, I think they're fractured. I don't think they have any strong leadership. Uh, it seems to be a different breed, but I think that happens, probably in all organizations. They make changes, and the old guard thinks, theirs was the best time and era for a particular organization. But, I don't comment on the modern situation with the Hells Angels. What I do is I work on a historical record of my time in the Hells Angels and back.
Okay.
So most of my stuff ends around 2011, 2012, but I do talk about the wars that are going on now and situations. You've got these Scandinavian countries that one by one they're outlawing all these. Like in Denmark and Germany, Australia, you can't even wear any club stuff on the street in Australia.
Oh, I didn't
So,
know that. Okay.
you know, yeah, yeah, the times are real tough, and I think ultimately, may become a crime to be in a motorcycle club. I think if you're adjudicated a criminal organization, uh, you know, law enforcement, along with Congress, may find a way to legislate these organizations out of existence.
Interesting.
I don't know. I think it all depends on the leaders of these clubs. They've got to do something. Uh, I don't want to say restore order, but they got to watch their membership and be very cautious what they get involved in.
Gotcha. Now, when you think of, motorcycle clubs, gangs, whatever you want to call them, you know, back, wow, has it been 10 years? Sons of Anarchy came on. And
Right,
that really opened people's eyes. It's Hollywood. And I talked to some, undercovers, and they were like actually watching Sons of Anarchy with club members, and they called it Sons of Malarkey. Yeah, and
right.
they're laughing about it. But there were some Hell's Angels that were on the show. Like,
Rusty was on there. Chuck Zito,
yeah, David LaBrava, he played Happy
La Brava.
Loman. That was a big
Yeah,
dude. Oh my God, that guy's huge. He
and
looks
but
he
what's
looks like he would be.
yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Sonny was on there as well, but none of those
Yeah,
guys are in the club anymore. I don't know, if they're pursuing acting careers and how they're doing, but uh, I don't know. Kurt Sutter well. We
Yeah.
talk on occasion on the phone, but I mean, he really captured something the American public was looking for. I mean,
Yeah,
what did he have, 6 or 7 seasons?
yes,
That's
for
a good
TV,
run on.
that's a really good run for television.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it
very,
scratched a
very good
niche.
run.
Obviously it was Hollywood, but what I did like about it at the very end, the main character, Jax Teller, is like, we're not good people. We kill people, we're running guns, we're doing all kinds of illegal stuff when we hurt a lot of people. And, at the very end, he
Right.
kind of just like lays that out there. And I'm like, all right, it's not really glorifying it, but it, some movies or TV shows or whatever, it was so damn serious. It was so gloomy. I don't know, what was that motorcycle movie? It was supposed to be the Chicago Outlaws. It came out about a year ago, maybe.
Bike riders.
Yeah, bike riders. I
The
fell
bike
as-
riders.
I fell asleep. I'm like, when is the action gonna like pick up? I did not like that movie
Well,
at all.
I think that was more of a metaphysical tale of a club in transition. You know how they started out? They were a bunch of fun-loving guys,
Yeah,
and ultimately, it became, their main purpose was criminality,
right.
and they were killing people. I mean, look what happened to the leader of the club at the end.
Yes.
And a lot of people said that the new guy with the headband represented Taco.
Yeah, that
I
I
don't know
heard
if
that
you
too.
if you've heard.
Yeah, I heard
Yeah,
that too.
yeah.
But do you think those guys got much guff for going on a Hollywood show like Sons of Anarchy and maybe exposing club secrets, or
Well,
was that against the
I mean,
rules?
I've been accused of that myself. I did a 6 episode series on the Outlaw Chronicles on the History Channel. I was on that special 8 episodes of Secrets of the Hells Angels on A&E that I wanted to retitle, not so many Secrets of the Hells Angels. They really did. Really, was nothing secret about it. But, you know,
Do you
I
think they
think
got
that,
shit for doing it though? I mean, was is that something frowned upon? I mean, obviously, I'm
yeah, I mean, they
guessing
don't
that
like it.
right,
You're gonna have people that complain, but people complain about me. I mean, I'm not even in the club anymore, and they complain about me. And I think people generally like to complain, but I got a new book coming out. They're probably gonna complain about that too. But
right.
I, I think you got to choose what you want to do. Like I'm creating a historical record. I don't want somebody 100 years from now telling the tale of how they think I lived my life. I would rather record it now myself, and somebody 100 years from now can read it and he can say this guy's full of crap, or he can go, wow, a pretty interesting life.
Right. Now, is it still a straight white male club? I mean, no females allowed except, for old ladies, correct?
Well, there were female members at one time, and
How long ago was that?
if in the mid '60s, if you look at my Instagram and
There were full
Facebook, I've
patch
got
members
pictures.
that were
Full
females?
patch female members. I got pictures of them. Sonny pushed most of those gals out of the club.
Okay.
But it's strictly a white male organization. And people go, "Oh, you guys are racist." And no, I disagree. What the clubs did is they follow the color prison lines.
Mm.
And I don't know if you know much about prison in California, and
Oh yeah, there's no
California prisons.
there's no diversity there. I mean, either you're in that,
No,
one, yeah, that's yeah.
yeah, you run if you're black, you run with the blacks. If you're a Mexican, you run with the Mexicans. If you're white, you run with the whites. I've seen some of the biker guys that are Mexican. They can run with who they want, but like in prisons, the bikers they all run together.
Okay.
And
Okay.
like the East Bay Dragons, that's a exclusively black bike club.
Right. There in
And
Milwaukee,
I
there's exclusively black clubs where I would not be, obviously I was a
sure, yeah.
cop, so they're not going to open their arms to me, but because I'm white, there's no way I'd be able to get into that club.
Yeah, you're not going to get in it, and you have to follow those color lines. Like I've been in the East Bay Dragons clubhouse and partied with them. Ran into some during my prison stays, but they are a black club. We were a white club.
Okay, gotcha. Now, as far as females go in the club, what is their role? I mean, there's old ladies. That's what the wives or girlfriends are called, correct?
They have no influence whatsoever on the surface, but you know as well as I do. Uh,
I know where
you
this
know,
is going.
Yeah, somebody gets under one of these women's skin, they're probably going to have hell to pay because they're sleeping with somebody, and that somebody could be the president of the club, and he could you know be influenced by somebody he's sleeping with. You know exactly what I'm saying.
Oh, yes, yes, I am. Now, is there a rule saying that you don't sleep with like another brother's old lady?
Yeah, that's a automatic kick out. Using heroin of any form is an automatic kick out. Slamming drugs, using a needle, that's automatic kick out. Got to ride an American-made motorcycle. You got to be 21 or have a fake ID that says you're 21. Uh, you know, those are those are some of the rules I didn't cover before,
Right.
but they're rules.
Sure, sure. Now, what about fake angels? You can get almost anything on the internet. You can get a counterfeit patch. So if I kind of lost my mind and decided it's like, okay, I'm gonna get a Hell's Angel patch and hop on my Harley. I've got a 17th Street Bob. That's what I ride. And I'm just gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna go into Hell's Angels territory with my fake patch. What's gonna happen to me?
You're going to have a problem,
Like
and
what?
not something I would. Well, I mean, uh, you could wind up losing your life over it. You know what it's like. You're a police officer. Things don't always go as they planned. You go to kick somebody's ass, and they wind up hitting their head on the ground. When you knock them down, and they wind up dying.
Right?
You got a murder assault on your hand.
Yeah. You see.
They sell these membership cards. They sell patches. They sell
Yep.
T-shirts. It's a I don't know if they're making any money. I figure they got to be making some money on it, but these fake people come to my websites and to my social media, and they try to get people to write them, or they reach out to
Mm,
people. There's fake sites up there using my name. People are selling stuff. I mean, it's running rampant. It's very dangerous, and anybody gets caught wearing any of that stuff, you know, they're subject to a real good ass kicking, or perhaps more.
gotcha. Now, how did you wind up quitting the Angels?
I just decided that enough was enough for me. We were fighting wars on five fronts. People were kind of turning inward. There was a lot of inner conflict, and I figured I had a pretty good run, and I just wanted to step away. I still consider myself an outlaw. I still ride a Harley.
What do you got? What do
I'm
you
out
ride?
there. I ride a 2003 Ultra Classic with a sidecar on it.
Oh, no kidding. That's
I've got
cool.
two
You
hitters.
don't see too many of those.
No, you don't. And I take my wife and my dog with me, and
Yeah.
I get around. I'd put in a long tenure as not only a member but as a leader, and I felt that I wanted to get back to the basics, and so I walked away.
All right. Now, from talking to friends of friends and actual members of different clubs, the overwhelming feeling is when you accept that lifestyle and you say yes and you're initiated in, or you're now a Hell's Angel or whatever motorcycle club, there is no quitting. There's you can get kicked out, for
Right.
different rule violations, etc., but there is no quitting. You are
Well, they frown on
whatever for
it.
life. I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
they
what?
certainly frown on it. And I think that, part of I went to the meeting. I told them I didn't like the direction of the club. I said we have become the people we rebelled against, and I'm leaving. I go. Anybody's got anything to say? Say it now.
Yeah,
Nobody said anything. My status was out good. Within 2 weeks, Sonny Barger went on this just terrible character assassination of me, and that's the position. I'm out bad. Nobody can contact me. Nobody can talk to me. But I will tell you, I talk to Hell's Angels on the down low all the time. You
sure.
know, I'm not going to put them on Front Street, but Sonny's gone. Uh, but that out bad status is still in place, and that's okay. I'm fine with it.
All right. Now, you gave most of your life to that club. You sacrificed a lot to that
I
club,
did,
and then they
and
kind of turn around and shit on you. You know,
they did.
how does that make you feel?
Well, I feel like either you're in or you're out. And I think I knew that when I made the decision to quit. And I knew what the consequences would be of leaving. And, I'm fine with it.
All
I
right.
don't have to answer to anybody. I don't have to answer the phone at 3 in the morning. Uh, uh, because somebody got shot, or somebody's going to jail, or somebody ran into a brick wall on their bike. So it took a lot of pressure off of me. I get my kicks uh, writing my books, doing my YouTube stuff, my Patreon stuff, doing these television shows when I'm approached. But I'm happy with my decision. I have no interest to go back. Uh, and do that again.
Sure.
I do go back in time because I reminisce a lot. I do that when I write and when I do my little YouTube stories. But I'm very happy with where I'm at in my life.
Gotcha. Now, we alluded to this before, but to me, riding a motorcycle is very zen-like. I absolutely love it. Nothing clears your head better, I think, than being out in the country on a bike. I prefer to be by myself and just riding. You know,
I
what if?
do as well. I like to solo ride.
Yeah,
That's one of the things I didn't miss when I left the club. Riding a motorcycle. What's great about it is when you reach a point in time with your proficiency, you don't have to think about it. That's a
right.
real Zen activity. When you do something and it just comes natural to you. You're not
It kind
thinking
of
about it.
it kind of becomes like an extension of your body.
Absolutely. No,
Yeah,
I'm with you 100% on that. It's probably for me, it's a purest form of Zen.
yeah,
I mean,
I agree.
riding 100 miles an hour down the freeway is pretty hard to beat.
Yeah, it's pretty freaking cool. I love being out in the country, being in nature, and just riding
Right.
back roads. That's man, that's cool. Absolutely love it. So, if you could go back in time, knowing what you know now, would you still become a Hell's Angel?
Well, I'm not sure in the present tense I would, but if I could go back in time to 1966 when I walked into that world, I'd jump in it both feet with no reservations. But it's a different world now.
Right.
So, it's a hypothetical question. It's kind of hard to give an honest answer, but, if I could go back to what it was, I would say absolutely. I mean, it's interesting, the violence and whatnot wasn't there in the beginning. It was you jumped on a custom motorcycle. There weren't that many around, so when you ran across another guy riding what we called like a chopper,
Yeah.
you were excited to see him. You wanted to see, how did he mount his tank?
Sure.
Where did he put his foot pegs? What type of handlebars is he riding? Where did he get his pipes? And you have to understand, you couldn't buy these accessories in a bike store back then. You had to build them. If you were going to be a custom bike rider, you had to have some talent, and you had to build that bike. And there was, a few guys like Dean Lanza, Dick Woods. They were building these custom motorcycle parts, and that's what we were putting on our bikes. You could really tell, actually, geographically where somebody was from by what his motorcycle looked like.
Wow, that's cool.
It had an
Now,
accent to it.
did you ever go to Sturgis, or is that something Hell's Angels do?
I've been to Sturgis so many times I couldn't tell you how many times I've been there.
You know, I
I
was there
I lost
once in 2001 and I didn't see one patch. I heard
Well,
that they had patch members had their own like campgrounds where they hung out.
we had a ranch up there, the Bent Shoe Ranch, but
Okay.
uh, the Hells Angels were there every year. That was a Banditos national run. You might have been there on an off day or something,
Okay.
but you know, we actually timed our USA run. Our run ended when Sturgis began, so our members
Mm,
could actually ride to Sturgis.
gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, that was some of the neatest riding I've ever done. But I mean, I wouldn't do this again, but I rode from Milwaukee to Sturgis after working third shift, and we went straight out with two other buddies.
Right.
So we left at 8 in the morning, and we didn't get into Sturgis till about 1 o'clock the next morning. And
So you rode how many hours?
oh God, 8 to 8 is 12, about 17, 18 hours.
Yeah, I did that. I came home from Denver one time,
Oof, I'll never
straight.
do that again. Hell no. That
No,
was
me. I did it to save time, and I wound up. I was in bed for a week
oh,
almost.
yeah.
My body hurt so bad.
I was one gigantic cramp when I was done with that. I was dehydrated and just, yeah, that was bad news. But I do remember I went to go see West Coast Choppers. They got all the vendors there.
Right,
And, Jesse James was, the Discovery Channel had their special about him.
right,
And he was at the Camel tent, Camel cigarettes.
right,
And I'll never forget how amazing those bikes looked in person. The
right.
paintwork on those, the details. I mean, at first, it's like you watch it on TV, you're like, yeah, whatever, and they're cool looking, but then you like actually like look at these bikes, and you're like, oh my god, this guy's a master. It's
Yeah, he had a shop in Long Beach, West Coast
yeah,
Choppers, that was nice. I would go down there once in a while.
yeah, but man, there was a lime green bike there that, boy, if I had the cash, I would have bought it in half of a second. It was man, that was a slick looking bike. But
Right.
you were talking about books. Exile from Front Street. That's the book that I read, and I got the audio version. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to ask you is why write it? And is there a message, if any, you would like the reader to walk away for, with
Well,
after they're
you
done
have to
reading it?
you have to understand. I wrote that book after Sonny had started this character assassination of
Okay.
me, and the Hells Angels were under the guidance of Sonny. Uh, were attacking my character, telling a story that was complete lies. So I wrote that book because I wanted my voice to be heard as well, and I wanted to leave a record of what happened, how I saw it happen. Certainly, the Hells Angels can have their own opinion. Sonny Barger had his own opinion. Exile on Front Street is my opinion and how I remember it happening. I wrote a second book, Marked. It was a fictionalized account of my life. Uh, it's fiction. I wrote another book, Outlaw Riding Through the Storm. It's a group of short stories. And now I've wrote a fourth book that should be out later this year, Crossing the Rubicon. And it's a deeper dive into my tenure as a Hells Angel leader. It's kind of a breakdown of what I learned and how I conducted myself as a leader in the Hells Angels. And it's kind of a real insight. It's almost like you and I are buddies. The reader's reading it, and it's like he's there with me as
Okay.
I'm going through all these experiences. But that's why I write the books.
Okay.
I want
I've
my
got
voice
some
to be
I have some Facebook questions real quick from my group, Cops and Writers. So let's
there.
dig into that real quick here. Sterling Kirkland asked, I'd love to know what led him to join the Angels. And I think we went through that.
Yeah, we did.
And yeah, let's see. Richard Oliver Tolles asks, what was his first bike? And which bike did he wish he had when he started riding? I like that question.
Well, I my first bike was a 1956 straight leg panhead. I wound up trading it for a flathead. That became my signature bike in 1978. I won a super glide bike from Saint and Slave, and then that became my bike, my the bike that I rode constantly. I liked that bike really a lot. It had a hot rod motor in it. It was my first swing arm frame. Had a real nice front end on it with dual disc. Had a big Delorto carburetor on it. It was a great bike. It was kind of a prelude to the FXR. But
Okay.
I think the best all-around motorcycle is the FXR.
Okay.
It's reliable and you know, the, very. I never had my FXR break down. I always rode it out and rode it back.
Gotcha. Let's see. Annie Schwartz. I can't wait for this one. Yeah, me too, Annie. Al Castillo. Do all chapters have the same philosophy?
No, each chapter is kind of an entity unto itself. Uh, it grows a particular character from the area that they live in. The guys from Southern California are different from the guys from the Bay Area. The guys from the East Coast are completely different from the West Coast guys.
Really?
So, yeah, they have a different personalities, different values, and whatnot. Dress even a little different, even though, we're all, bikers and Hells Angels. The dress, you can tell, like the people from California dress a little bit different than the
Hmm.
guys from South Carolina or
Because Hell's Angels is worldwide. I mean, how many chapters are there? They're like all
oh,
over the world, right?
I lost count.
Yeah,
I think our motto was the sun never sets on the Hells Angels.
right. Because there's so many chapters
We're
all over the
everywhere.
world.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
I got it. All right, let's start wrapping this up. What's
All
life?
right.
What's life like for you now? You've got books, TV shows. What are you working on right now?
I just finished my book, Crossing the Rubicon. I'm putting the final touches on it with the edit, and I'm putting a lot of personal documents in it, correspondence between me and Sonny, and uh, messages to the general membership on how I feel about certain things. Going to try to put a lot of pictures in it that haven't been seen before. And from there, I've got another couple of book projects I'll start on. I want to do, I've got two more fiction books I'm thinking about doing. And, if TV projects come along, I'll jump on one of those maybe.
Sure. And like you said before, you're an expert witness for defense attorneys when it comes
Yeah,
to these things.
I've been doing a lot of that. It's a lot of fun. And, I get in the courtroom there and it's a different for me because I'm not a defendant. I'm in there.
Yeah.
And I'm an expert,
You're not
and
in the hot seat per se, right?
no, I'm not. And I know I can get up no matter what I say. I can get up and walk away.
Well, that's a good feeling. And your daughter
Yeah,
is a defense attorney, correct?
she is, and
Yeah.
she's worked for me. I've worked actually. I used to work in her office as a administrator for her law office, but
Okay.
I'm very busy. I'm very active. I walk every day. Try to work out, stay in shape.
Sure.
It's tough getting old. I'm pushing 80 here in
Well,
a
you're
couple of
looking
years.
good for 80, George. I will say
Feeling
that.
good. I just got to stick with it. Well, I appreciate you having me on your show.
Yeah, where can people go to learn more about you and your books? Do you have a website?
Yeah, georgechristie.com.
All right, and that should have all the links for all your socials and all that good stuff,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
All right, well,
for
very
sure.
good. George, this has been a treat. Thank you so much for being on my show, and it's been a great conversation.
You too. Thanks a lot. Take care, my friend.